He was 44 years old. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam and come home with a Purple Heart in both his legs, and a way of carrying himself that people in Garfield County, Montana, recognized as the particular posture of a man who had seen things he would not discuss. On the evening of March 11th, 1997, Dale Merritt walked out of his own front door, told his daughter he was stepping outside for a few minutes, and never came back inside. That is not a story about a man who walked away from his life. That is a story about a man who was taken from it by someone he had trusted completely, someone who sat at his table, someone whose name would be hidden for 26 years inside 6 inches of concrete in a basement floor that nobody thought to look beneath. But to understand why that dog tag was there, and whose it was, and what it meant, you have to go back to Garfield County in the winter of 1997. Because to understand what was lost, you first have to understand who Dale Merritt was. Jordan, Montana sits in the center of Garfield County on the eastern high plains, a place of vast sky and winter wind that comes down from Canada without anything to slow it, where the nearest hospital is 90 miles away, and neighbors mean something different than they do in places with more of them. In 1997, the county had fewer than 1,500 residents spread across more than 4,000 square miles of grassland and coulees, and the kind of silence that either settles into a person or doesn't. Dale Merritt had grown up there, the son of a wheat rancher, and had gone to Vietnam in 1971 at age 18 and come back in 1973 with a body that still worked and a mind that had learned to live alongside things it couldn't forget. He had been ranching and doing fence work and general labor in the county for 2 decades by the time 1997 came. He drove a 1989 Ford F-250, 2-tone brown, with a cracked passenger mirror that he kept meaning to fix. He had a CB radio mounted under the dash for the long drives between properties when the roads iced over. He was the kind of man who showed up to help a neighbor move equipment without being asked, who remembered the names of other people's children, who kept a spare set of tools in his truck bed on the principle that someone always needed something. He had been married briefly in the early 1980s and had 1 daughter from that marriage, Cassie, who was 19 years old in 1997 and who had been living with her father on the property outside Jordan since she finished high school the previous spring. He had one particular habit that everyone who knew him knew. At the end of every working day, before he came inside, he would stand for a few minutes at the fence line at the edge of his property and look west at the Yellowstone River Valley in the last light. Cassie had grown up watching him do it from the kitchen window. She never asked him what he was thinking about. She understood, in the way that daughters understand certain things about their fathers, that some part of him was still accounting for something that had happened a long time ago, in a country very far from this fence line. The Purple Heart from his first tour hung on a nail above his workbench in the barn. He had never put it on display anywhere in the house. That February had been hard. The temperature had not risen above 0 for 11 consecutive days in mid-month, and the roads in and out of Jordan had been impassable for 4 of them. People had stayed close to their properties, burning through firewood and checking on their animals and waiting for the cold to relent. By early March, it had. The ground was still frozen solid, but the worst of the winter felt behind them. Dale had been in good spirits that week. He had lined up a full season of fence work with 2 neighboring operations and had talked about maybe getting the truck's passenger mirror fixed before spring. He had told Cassie that he was thinking about driving up to see his brother in Billings in April. On the evening of March 11th, 1997, a pickup truck that Cassie did not recognize parked in the gravel drive outside their house for approximately 2 hours. She would not be able to describe the truck in detail. It was full dark by 7 p.m. in early March at that latitude, and she had been in the back of the house, But she remembered hearing it arrive, and she remembered the sound of voices outside, her father's and another man's, low and even. At approximately 9 p.m., her father knocked twice on her door and told her he was stepping outside for a few minutes. He sounded normal. He sounded like himself. He never came back inside. Cassie waited until 10:15 before she went to look. The front porch was empty. The truck was gone. Her father's F-250 was still in the drive. His coat was on the hook by the door. His coat was on the hook. She walked the property with a flashlight. She called his name. At 11:40 p.m., she drove the 9 miles to Jordan and found the deputy on night duty at the Garfield County Sheriff's Office. His name was Deputy Harlan Greer. He drove back to the property with her and walked it again. The ground was frozen solid in every direction. There were no footprints that held. The gravel drive showed tire tracks from the unknown truck, 2 sets, arrival and departure. But gravel in March in Montana doesn't preserve detail. By 1 a.m., it was clear that Dale Merritt was not on his property and was not reachable by any means available. He was reported missing at 2:04 a.m. On March 12, 1997, in the first week, the Garfield County Sheriff's Office mounted a significant search for a county of its size and resources. Deputies covered the surrounding roads and properties. The neighboring ranchers organized their own foot search of the coulees and creek beds within 2 miles of Dale's fence line. The Yellowstone River, still partly frozen and running fast with melt, was searched along the accessible banks. Dale's brother drove down from Billings and spent 6 days in Jordan. On the 3rd day, Dale's F-250 was gone over by the state crime lab out of Miles City. No evidence of struggle. Nothing missing from the cab except Dale himself. On the 4th day, a tire cast was made of the best preserved track in the gravel drive from the unknown truck. It was documented, measured, photographed. The cast was logged into evidence. It matched a common light truck tire sold under 3 different brand names across the entire Mountain West. That detail went into a file and stayed there. The unknown truck was the investigation's first wall. Nobody in Jordan recognized the description Cassie gave. Nobody in the county reported seeing it on the roads that night. Whoever had driven it to Dale Merritt's property and left with him had come and gone without being noticed, which in a county of 1,500 people across 4,000 square miles was not, as it turned out, difficult to accomplish. Under Sheriff Tom Ridley led the investigation. He was 52, a Garfield County native who had known Dale Merritt for 30 years, and he ran the case as hard as the department's resources allowed. He identified 2 men who had had recent disputes with Dale over fence lines. Property line conflicts being among the most common sources of friction in ranch country. Both were interviewed at length. Both had verifiable locations for the night of March 11th. Neither drove the type of truck that matched the cast. By June of 1997, 3 months into the investigation, Ridley had spoken to 14 people who had been in contact with Dale in the weeks before he disappeared. One name had come up twice in separate interviews. A man named Wayne Crossfield, 50 years old, a Vietnam veteran who had served in the same unit as Dale in 1971 and 1972, and who had reconnected with Dale at a veterans event in Miles City the previous autumn. Crossfield lived in Dawson County, about 90 miles west. According to 2 people who had seen them together at the veterans event, the reunion had not gone smoothly. There had been an argument, kept quiet, the kind of thing that people at those gatherings pretend not to notice. When Ridley called Crossfield to arrange an interview, Crossfield was cooperative and calm. He said he had not seen Dale since the Miles City event. He said he did not own a light truck. He said he had been home that evening with his wife, who confirmed it. Ridley noted the discrepancy about the argument in the case file. He noted it twice, in different sections. He asked a deputy to follow up on the truck question with Dawson County. The follow-up was assigned in July of 1997. It was never completed. The deputy left the department that August. The thread went cold. Dale Merritt's remains were never found. By 2000, 3 years had passed. The case had been reviewed twice internally, and both times concluded with the same summary: insufficient evidence to establish cause of death, no identified suspect, investigation ongoing. Cassie Merritt was 22 years old. She had stayed on the property outside Jordan through the first winter alone, and then through a second. She took over the fence work contracts her father had lined up, working alongside neighbors who helped without being asked, in the way that communities in that part of Montana understood obligation. She called the Garfield County Sheriff's Office on the first day of every month. Not every week, not twice a week, once a month, regular as a utility payment, and always with the same 2 questions: had anything come in, and was anyone still looking? The answer was almost always no to the first question and yes to the second, and she accepted both answers and thanked whoever answered, and hung up and went back to the fence work. By 2007, 10 years after Dale disappeared, Tom Ridley had retired. He had kept a copy of the case file in a cardboard box in his home office. He had looked at it regularly, with the particular attention of a man who knows he missed something and cannot identify what it was. The tire cast photograph was in the top sleeve of the second folder. He had looked at it enough times that he no longer saw it. By 2015, 18 years had passed. The Purple Heart still hung on the nail above the workbench in the barn, because Cassie had not moved it and would not. She had 2 children of her own by then, born to a man she had married in 2005 and divorced in 2012. Her father's property was still hers. The house needed a new furnace, and the basement floor, poured concrete, old and cracked in the way of basements that had been through 40 Montana winters, had developed a drainage problem along the south wall that she had been meaning to address for 2 years. Wayne Crossfield had retired from his job with a farm equipment dealer in Glendive in 2013. He attended the Dawson County Veterans Day ceremony every November. He had 3 grandchildren. He was known in his community as a quiet man who had served his country and kept to himself. His name had not appeared in any official investigation for 18 years. Then, in the spring of 2023, Cassie's son Kyle, 20 years old, home from his first semester at Montana State, offered to help his mother address the basement floor. They hired a 2-man crew from Jordan to break up the old slab and rapport it. The crew started on a Tuesday morning in April and had the south corner broken up by noon. It was Kyle who spotted it. Every case here starts with weeks of digging through records, tracking down documents, and making sure the people involved are treated the way they deserve. If that work matters to you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Drop a comment and let us know where in the world you're watching from. It keeps this going. Now let's get back to Dale Merritt. Kyle Merritt was not sure, at first, what he was looking at. It was a piece of metal, roughly rectangular, about 1.5 inches by 3 inches, with a chain still attached, embedded in the broken concrete near the south wall of the basement, not lying on the subfloor beneath the slab, but cast into the concrete itself, poured around it deliberately, as if someone had placed it there before the pour set. He picked it up carefully, brushed the concrete dust off the face of it, and read what was stamped into the metal. It was a military dog tag. It had a name on it, a serial number, a blood type. The name was not Dale Merritt. He took a photograph of it with his phone and went upstairs and showed his mother. Cassie stood in her kitchen and looked at the photograph for a long time. Then She asked Kyle how deep it had been. He said maybe 2 inches down, maybe 3 in the concrete, near the south wall. She asked when the basement floor had last been poured. Neither of them knew exactly. The previous owners before her father had done it, sometime in the 1980s, based on the condition of it. But the south corner, the drainage problem area, had been patched. Cassie knew it had been patched because there was a visible seam in the old slab, running east to west, about 4 feet from the south wall. The patch was newer than the rest. She had always assumed it was a repair done sometime in the 1990s, before she took over the property. She had never thought about it specifically until this moment. Kyle called the Garfield County Sheriff's Office at 2:17 p.m. On April 18, 2023, the detective who took the call was Sergeant Dana Hollis, 34 years old, who had joined the department in 2016 and had been assigned to a formal review of 12 Garfield County cold cases in 2022. The Dale Merritt file was one of the 12. She had read every page of it, including Tom Ridley's notes, including the tire cast photograph, including the 2 references to Wayne Crossfield and the argument at the Miles City Veterans event, and including the notation in a different hand from Ridley's that read, "Follow-up Dawson County Truck pending August 1997. Nothing after it. No completion. No result. She drove to Cassie's property that afternoon. She photographed the dog tag in place before the crew moved anything further. She collected it into evidence. She ran the serial number through the Department of Defense personnel database. The name stamped on the tag was Wayne Thomas Crossfield. The serial number confirmed service in the United States Army, 1969, 1973. The same unit, the same years as Dale Merritt. Hollis sat in her truck in Cassie's driveway for a moment before she called her supervisor. Outside, the April light was long and cold across the pasture, and the Yellowstone Valley was visible to the west in the distance, and on the fence line at the edge of the property there was a place where a man used to stand at the end of the day and look at it. She made the call. The investigation that followed moved with the deliberate precision of a case that had waited long enough. Sergeant Hollis coordinated with the Montana Division of Criminal Investigation and the FBI's Cold Case Unit out of Billings. The concrete patch in the basement was dated using core sample analysis, a technique that measures the chemical composition of cured concrete to estimate its age. The result placed the pour of the south corner patch between 1996 and 1999, consistent with the winter and spring of 1997. Ground-penetrating radar was used on the property in the weeks following the discovery. The subfloor beneath the patched section of the basement was undisturbed. Dale Merritt's remains were not in the basement. But what the basement held was something else, a man's presence, documented in metal, placed into concrete by someone who had either dropped it accidentally in the wet pour and not realized it, or who had believed it was gone and could never be traced. Court documents confirmed the latter interpretation when investigators found in Wayne Crossfield's own records that he had reported his dog tag lost in 1997. In March of 1997, within 2 weeks of Dale Merritt's disappearance, he had requested a replacement tag from the VA in April of 1997. The request was on file. He had known the tag was there. He had hoped the floor would hold. DNA evidence collected from items found in the property's outbuildings, tools, materials consistent with the time frame, placed Wayne Crossfield at the scene. The tire cast from 1997 was re-examined against registration records for vehicles Crossfield had owned or had access to in that period. The tread matched a truck he had borrowed from a cousin in Dawson County on March 11, 1997, and returned the following morning. The cousin, located in Billings and now 73 years old, confirmed the loan when investigators showed him the records. He had not known, he said, what it had been used for. What had happened in that argument at the Miles City Veterans event in the autumn of 1996 became clear through records investigators located during the subsequent proceedings. A dispute over property. Not fence lines, but something older. Something from Vietnam. A question of what Dale Merritt had known and what he had been prepared to say about an incident that had occurred in 1972 and that. Crossfield had spent 25 years ensuring stayed buried. The details of that incident are part of the sealed record of the criminal proceedings. What is part of the public record is this. Wayne Crossfield, 76 years old, was arrested at his home in Glendive, Montana on September 14, 2023. 2 Dawson County deputies and a Montana DSI agent came to his door at 7 a.m. A neighbor across the road was getting into her car when the arrest happened. She told local press she had watched the patrol cars pull up and had not moved for a long time. She had known Wayne Crossfield for 11 years and had brought him soup when he had knee surgery in 2021, and could not imagine, standing in her driveway in the September morning, what she was watching. Crossfield was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Dale Merritt. In pre-trial proceedings, his attorney moved to suppress the dog tag on chain of custody grounds. The motion was denied. In March of 2024, Wayne Crossfield pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison. He read a brief statement at sentencing in which he said that he had spent 26 years trying not to think about March 11, 1997, and that he had never fully succeeded. Cassie Merritt was 46 years old at the sentencing. She sat in the front row of the courtroom in Jordan with her son Kyle beside her. She had driven to the Garfield County Sheriff's Office once a month for 26 years. She did not do it anymore. Dale Merritt stood at his fence line at the end of every working day and looked west at the Yellowstone River Valley in the last light. He had done it for years, and the neighbors who knew him knew what it meant, even if they never said it. He had carried something back from Vietnam that a place like Garfield County could accommodate but never fully resolve, and he had built a life around it anyway, the fence work. The neighbors helped without being asked. The daughter who watched him from the kitchen window and understood without asking. He had a Purple Heart on a nail above his workbench, and a cracked mirror on his truck he kept meaning to fix, and a trip to Billings planned for April that he never got to take. He deserved to take that trip. He deserved every April after it. Cassie Merritt gave a statement to the Jordan Tribune after the sentencing. She said that her father had trusted Wayne Crossfield the way you trust someone you fought beside, which is a trust unlike any other, not because it is reasonable, but because it was earned in circumstances that most people will never understand. She said that the dog tag was, in a way, the most fitting thing that could have solved the case, because her father had believed in that service, had been proud of it, and it was only right that a piece of it came back to say what needed to be said. The Merritt case contributed directly to a change in Montana cold case protocol, adopted in 2024, requiring physical evidence review and property examination in all unsolved disappearances when a change of property occupancy or renovation occurs. The protocol is expected to affect an estimated 31 open cases statewide. Sergeant Dana Hollis filed the case closed in October of 2023. She had been assigned the review in 2022 and had noticed the notation in Ridley's hand that said follow-up Dawson County retruck, pending with nothing after it. She had noted it the first time she read the file and had carried it in her mind for a year before the phone rang from Cassie's property. The follow-up had been pending for 26 years. She completed it. Justice does not always arrive when it is needed. Sometimes it arrives when a floor is finally broken up and the cold concrete gives back what it has been holding. Sometimes what the ground keeps is not lost. It is only waiting for someone to look. Dale Merritt served his country and came home and built a life and was killed by a man he considered a brother because of what he knew. Do you believe the sentence Wayne Crossfield received was justice, or does 26 years of freedom change the weight of it? And for those following renovation discoveries that have broken open cold cases, is it disturbing or reassuring to know that evidence can survive that long, in that way, waiting to be found? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read all of them. Justice found Dale Merritt after 26 years. Stories like his are why this channel exists. If you believe truth is worth pursuing, no matter how long it takes, subscribe. More cases are waiting in the description below. Thank you for watching.